Applications, tips, and tricks. The first thing to do is to read the whole application before you begin applying. Check that you are eligible. Be sure that you've read the rules. Be sure that you know when everything is due, including any other pieces that someone else is going to send other than you. So be sure you know everything that is needed for this application and think through how you are going to manage to meet the timeline for it. You'll probably need letters of recommendation, and these are one of the first things you should get started on, even before you start the application yourself in some cases. Look at what they ask for in a recommendation. Who can best speak to those qualities in you? That might not be the first person who comes to mind. It certainly should not be a member of your family or a family friend. It's usually a professor. Most of these scholarships have an academic edge to them, and therefore a professor is the best person to speak to your ability in a classroom. You want to give a professor at least 2 weeks notice if you need one of these letters, because they're busy people too. And you want to ask politely in a formal email where you address the person you're asking, you identify what it is you're going to do, when you would need the letter by, you send your resume, and you ask them if it would be helpful even to meet with them in terms of sharing some of the insights into what you're doing in the application or why you're doing it. You've got to remind them who you are and help guide them in terms of what's going to be needed in this letter. You then may want to remind them, be very careful and gentle in doing that. If they haven't turned their letter in by, 2 days before the deadline, it's probably a good idea to send a gentle, hello, I just wanted to remind you it is due, etc. Once they've sent the application in, make sure you say thank you. A handwritten note goes a long way, and you never know when you might need another letter in the future. In terms of the essays you will have to write for these scholarships, answer the question. Read the prompt again and go back and read your essay and make sure you are answering what they ask you to say. That's the number one. There's no point you listing off your accomplishments if that's not what they've asked you to do in the essay. So make sure you are answering what the essay asks for. Revise your essay. Most of us don't write brilliantly the first time around. Go back through and edit it. Get it to where you think it's done, wait 24 hours and come back to it with fresh eyes. You'll probably find other ways you can improve, words you can play with, etc. Most essays take multiple drafts, so it's a patient process. It will take you a while. You should also think about asking other people to read it and give you feedback, and be prepared if they say, well, it didn't really do this for me. You've got to take that into perspective. Maybe you think it's great, but if someone suggests some changes, think about whether you want to make those changes or not. It's your essay, but if you ask people to give you feedback, you've got to be ready to take it. Some things to think about in these essays. Oftentimes you have to write about you, which is difficult, but this is one occasion where it's okay to boast. So you can talk about the nonprofit you founded, or how one of the things you did in the lab contributed to an ongoing experiment that's going to make a difference. Try and avoid cliches and think about not saying what anyone else could say. So don't fall back on trite sayings. Be original. Read each sentence on its own in isolation. If someone else could say that, or if someone could say it about, for example, another country, if you're applying to go to a certain country, then that probably isn't the best that sentence can be yet. The other thing to look for and be careful, these essays are about you, so you tend to write, I did this, I went here, I saw this. If every sentence is starting with that first person I, you need to rethink how you can shift the focus a little. It still needs to be on you, but don't start every sentence with an I. Think about varying your sentence structure so that you invite the reader to go along with you. Very important is that opening line, because that will establish the impression in the same way that walking into a room establishes your impression. Look at these two different examples. You can see the one on the left is probably a sentence most of us could write. The one on the right intrigues us and makes us think, hang on a second, where are we going with this? It's called a hook. It's more interesting. So think about that opening line very carefully. You want to bring your reader in and have them want to read the rest of what it is you have to say. If they ask you, tell us about yourself, which sometimes happens in these applications, it's very difficult to know how to frame that, how to structure that, and there's no one answer. You are you. What is special about you? So think about some of these questions. Don't necessarily answer them all, but you can certainly talk about why you took Chinese in high school if you're now applying to go for a Fulbright to China. You can talk about doing biology and what thrills you about finally getting in a lab and doing a dissection, because in fact you're going to end up being a taxidermist. You can talk about when you were planning to be a nuclear physicist, but it turns out you're really good at Spanish, so now you're going to be a translator. Whatever it is that's special about you, we all have a story, and it's a question of finding what your story is. Brainstorm all the different things that you've done, all the reasons you did them. Find some connections that tell your story. How did you end up here applying for this opportunity? And why are you the person who should be given this award? Here's just one example of a prompt. What it does provide, you can see, are different elements to think about, some of which I encapsulated in the previous slide, and some other things to think about. And what's really important is the bottom bit of this. It should not be a recording of facts already listed on the application. If they ask for a resume or details of your schooling or your achievements, don't list those in your scholarship essay, because that's redundant. Then you're using space where you could say something new and unique about yourself to repeat yourself. That's not going to get you as far as if you take the time to tell your story. Do also make sure that you relate what you're telling them to the opportunity for which you're applying. Go back and make sure you know exactly what you're aiming for in telling this story. Other things to think about to get you started. Why do you want to do this? And that's probably the hardest question to answer. If your answer is because I want to go abroad or get money, that's not going to cut it. You've got to think about other ways. That might be your goal, but there are probably other elements to those. And so that's what you want to think about more. Think about past experiences. Think about what you're going to bring to the place you're going and why that's a benefit to the people who are going to fund you to get there. Brainstorming and taking the time to write out, type out all these different ideas, drawing a sort of picture map of the things you've achieved through your life is a really key element of this application. Taking the time to scribble all those notes out, or having a conversation with someone who asks you a lot of questions about yourself and draws out things you had forgotten that make a difference in your journey. That's the way you get started on this application. The last thing, and obviously I can't say it too many times, is revise. Every word counts. And sometimes there are word limits. Don't worry about the word limit on the first draft. You're going to go back and you're going to improve it. You're going to see you use the word excitement in 3 lines consecutively. Change it. Don't do that. Vary your vocabulary. Switch up what it is you're saying. Use your own words. Don't think that you need to use a thesaurus, but you do need to make sure that every single word is the exact word you want to use in this application. It takes some time. There is support on campus for you, though. The UNO Writing Center is a wonderful resource you can go to and ask them just to read over, give you feedback. These people are experts in writing, so they can help you really hone those drafts. The Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships also has people who can read through and respond to what it is you're working on, or talk through different opportunities with you. You can find them on the website, like you can the Writing Center. And of course, you've got your professors and your advisor. They know you. Talk to a professor about what it is you want to do, especially if you have a good relationship with your English teaching professors. Ask them if they'll help you out with an application, and probably they'll give you more feedback. Thanks very much for watching, and good luck with whatever it is you're applying for.